All right, we're in a sermon series right now called Built Different. And what we've been observing is that normal isn't working. So we look around in our culture, we look around in our country, and we're like, hey, you know, what people are doing, the normal thing that they're doing isn't working, and the outcomes that they're getting, that's not good. Normal isn't working. And that just to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results is insane. We believe that to live the same way as everybody else and expect a different life is also insane. So what that means for us is if you don't want the results that anyone else is getting, then you need to do things that no one else is doing. You need to be different. And if you're a Christian, it's not just that you're like invited to be different. It's more than that. You're called to be different. In some areas of your life, you're commanded to be different. So we're looking at different areas of your life where you need to be different. Now, last week we took a little side road, talked about how we're different as a church. And this week I want to put the spotlight kind of back on you because there is certain places in your life where it's like more important that you're different. Certain times, certain seasons of your life where it's actually more important that you're different, more than others. You don't need to be different all the time. You don't need to be just a constant contrarian. It's super fun. You should try it. I do it all the time. But you don't have to be. But there are certain parts, certain seasons, certain days where it's really important that you're different. And that's one of the places I want to talk about today. So here it is. We'll start with a question. How do you respond when life punches you in the mouth? You know, when life gets difficult, how do you respond? How do you respond when what happens isn't what you wanted to happen? Because those are the moments, those are the days, those are the seasons where it's more important for you to be different than almost any other time in your life. So what's normal? When life punches somebody in the mouth, what's normal look like? I've got a little list of what normal looks like for what a normal person would respond when life punches them in the mouth. So the first thing that we would see is that they blame others. They blame others. So if I've got, my life's not going the way I want, it's not my fault, it's your fault, right? Like you're the one that did that, or it was my boss, or it was the economy, or it was Obama, I don't know, it was somebody else. So that's the first instinct. That's normal. When life doesn't go your way, you blame. And then the second thing you do is you battle people, right? Because it's your fault, now I want to fight you, and I want to get after you. You ever get in that place where life just isn't going well, and you just kind of feel like fighting everybody? I was in that place the other day, and my wife's like, you just need to go away because you're fighting everybody, and it's not actually them, it's you. And I was like, how dare you? I want to fight you again. You know how that kind of feeds itself? That's normal. To brood over it. So I'm, instead of praying about it, I'm just going to turn it over in my mind again and again and again and again. And instead of just being this, it usually turns into a spiral where I mentally spiral. That's normal. Or instead, maybe you bear down. Maybe you kind of put blinders on, put your head down and say, I'm just going to go straight ahead. I'm just going to blast through this season. I'm going to ignore everything. I'm not going to feel anything. I'm just going to go and I'm going to run as fast as I can through this season. Or maybe you kind of do the opposite. Maybe you shut down. I'll hibernate for the season. I'm going to shut everything and everyone out, and I'm just going to get through it because eventually it'll be over. Or maybe you numb out, you know? You don't want to feel reality, so you put some layers between you and reality, whether that's a bottle or a remote control or a phone or something. You put some layers between you and reality, and you numb that thing. Or maybe you would just explode. That's maybe a combination of multiple one of these things. You do all of them. That's normal. That's a normal way to respond when life punches you in the mouth. And I think I don't have to explain why these are going to be damaging to you. This is going to cause all kinds of problems in your life if this is how you respond when life punches you in the mouth. Now, here's why this is so important. Here's what I believe, and I would hope you would lean into this as well. Your response to what happens to you ends up being more important than what happens to you. Your response to what happens to you ends up being more important than what happens to you. Now, I know there's some situations you could be like, hold up, I've got a situation. I get that. There might be some exceptions to this. But overall, I believe that it's not your circumstances, it's how you respond to your circumstances. It's actually going to dictate the direction that you end up on. And that's really crazy important. One, it's important because you can't control your circumstances, but you can control how you respond to your circumstances. So that's actually a comforting thing. That since it's your decisions and your response and your reaction that's actually going to dictate the course, you have a level of control over that. But it's also important because I think a lot of times we allow ourselves to believe that the circumstances are what's dictating the course of our life. And I truly believe that it's more important how you respond than what actually happens to you. So what I want to do is I want to look at a story of 3 young men in the Bible who get thrown into a horrible circumstance. This is life punching all 3 of them in the mouth. And I want to see how they respond, because they respond in a very God-honoring way, in the way that, and it's different. It's different, and I want to lean into this. So, familiar story, if you grew up in church, super familiar story. But real quick, the background is that the nation of Israel has been conquered, which you're like, well, which part of the Bible is that? Well, the whole thing. They just keep getting conquered left and right. This is basically, so this specific time is by Babylon. Babylon has conquered Israel, and they've taken many of the Israelites into captivity all the way over into Babylon, and that's the place where we find these 3 young men. They were Israelites who had been taken into captivity, and now they're in captivity on the king of Babylon at the time. His name is Nebuchadnezzar. And a little about Nebuchadnezzar. I know this is hard to imagine, but he's the leader of the country, and he has a really big ego. I know it's really straining to imagine what that would be like, but that's where they're at here, and it's really bad. So. Even more so when you kind of see what he does here in the story. So we pick up the story in Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide and set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messages to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officers to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. So that all these officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So he makes this 90-foot tall statue of himself. Can you imagine? Okay, let's just say you had statue money. I don't know what money that is, but that's right. That's a level. You could say that's like yacht level, statue level. You have enough money to say, I'm gonna have a statue made. And then you're like, well, what kind of statue do I want? I don't know, what should I have a statue made of? How about me? Can you imagine? I just can't imagine being like that. I'm like, well, at least I could have abs then. I guess that's the only way I might have it. I can't imagine thinking I have statue money and I'm gonna make a statue of myself. And then even more than that to say, well, how big do you want it? I don't know, close to 100 feet tall. That's crazy. That's as big as they make them, right? And then not only that, to say, hey, now that I've made this statue, you know what I wanna do? I'm gonna send invitations, which really demands everybody come and look at this thing. Everybody has to, because you're the king. If you send an invitation, not really an invitation, more of demand. Everybody come here, look at this thing that I made of me. That's the level of ego that our boy King Neb has. But he's not done yet. It's worse than that. Verse 4, here's what he commands. Then a herald shouted out, people of all races, nations, and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipes or other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Okay. Side note, by the way, Jonathan's on the hunt for a zither player. If anybody knows what that is, go ahead and volunteer. But all the different musical instruments back then they played. Again, so not only does he make a statue, not only is it of himself, not only is it 90 feet tall, not only did he invite everybody to come see it, also, hey, when the music plays, bow down to it. Wow, that's next level, right? And I want you to imagine the scene, because the way, this is a Sunday school story. I don't know if you grew up in church, this is a very familiar story, right? So I always imagine it like the music got played one time and either you bowed down or you didn't, and that was kind of the test and it was over. But the way this is worded, it was, hey, every time the music plays. So actually, better way to imagine this is kind of like a wedding reception. You've been to a wedding, it's a party, right? Everybody's kind of having a good time. But then, when everybody clinks their drink and the couple has to kiss now. And that happens consistently throughout the party. That's kind of what's happening here. Everybody's having a party, having a good time, and all of a sudden the music plays and we're all like, oh. And now you gotta bow down to this statue. King Nebuchadnezzar's up on his big table up there with all the people. He's drinking and having a good time. And he's kind of watching to see what's going on. And every time the music plays, people are bowing down. And that's the scene. And as the party's going, over off in the corner, 3 young men, when the music plays, don't bow down. And people are all bowing down, and somebody out of the corner of their eye catches, like, hold up a minute. They're not bowing down. Now, if you remember, it wasn't an invitation. This was a command, right? The king said it was a command, and he gave consequences. Did you see that right at the end? If you don't, you'll be thrown into a blazing furnace. So it wasn't like, hey, it'd be cool if you would, or isn't that statue awesome? You should. It was, no, you will, or I'm going to kill you. Horribly, by the way. So these young men are standing up in the back corner, and they're not bowing down, and they know full well the consequence. So what happens is some of the people notice this, and they become adult tattletales, and they go up to King Nebuchadnezzar, and they explain to him what they saw. And I'll give you a piece of that in verse 12. Here's what they say to King Nebuchadnezzar. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Look, Dad. Shut up. So here they are. Here are 3 heroes of the story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I just want to say, can you imagine? Like doing your yearly calendar and thinking like, what do I want to happen this year? And like somewhere on the calendar be like, you know what? I want one day where I have to choose between breaking the first commandment or dying a horrible death. Like, can you imagine like that? Like I want to blaspheme my God or be burned alive. Like that is not a good day, right? You don't plan that out. That's not something that you look forward to. That's not something you hope for. This is life punching them in the mouth. They get put in a situation where either choice, oh, this is rough. So this is as bad as it gets, And I want to point out, now already in the story, they've chosen to be different, right? Everybody else is bowing down and they're standing up. They're already saying, hey, I don't think normal's the way I want to go. We're going to be different. So they're already separating themselves out a little bit. But now they got tattled on and now they get called before the king. And this is kind of how the conversation goes down, verse 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage, an egomaniac that gets mad all the time, crazy, and ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or worship the golden statue I've set up? So he's like, just to confirm, that's actually what you did. And then he says this, verse 15, I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? And I feel like he wagged his head when he said it. If he just hadn't said that, I genuinely wonder if the story would be different. Because I feel like when he said that last sentence, God was like, what was that? What did you just say? Was that a challenge, sir? And what's interesting, what struck me, and the other thing struck me in Nebuchadnezzar's little interrogation here, is they get a second chance to do the wrong thing. And that's interesting, because whenever we talk about a second chance, we always talk about a second chance to do the right thing, but here they nailed the first one, and now they have a second chance to do the wrong thing. And I just want to point out that sometimes that's actually harder. Like it took a lot to nail the first time, and then life does always present a second chance to do the wrong thing. And sometimes it's that second chance to do the wrong things that's actually harder because you use a lot of willpower, and it took a lot out of you to make the choice the first time. And then the second time is the time where the devil can really get you. And maybe that's a time you should have your spiritual antenna up a little bit more. It's not that first test, it's that second test that you maybe are more likely to fail. And I bet it was tempting. All right, everybody's watching now. We were off in the corner before, I was standing and I was like, all right, Lord, I'm doing this thing. But now the spotlight's on them. The king is watching. The furnace is right over there. It's warm. Like that would have been really tempting to give in there. So they have this moment and they have the spotlight. They have the microphone. I feel like everybody's paying attention at this point. The party stops, right? When we might be burning somebody alive in a minute. So the party stopped. Everybody's paying attention. I don't think when King Neb got real mad, I don't think he was quiet about it, right? I feel like this is a public thing. And they answer. And the answer they give here is like, it's so good. It's like the response you want to have when life punches you in the mouth. So here's what they say, starting in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the golden statue you have set up." Whew. One of the parts of that that's most impressive, kind of a side note, is that they're still polite. Like they're about to be, like this is, you just signed your death warrant. If there was ever a time to be like, screw you, man, like could have been, you know, you want to like that angry quitting, like that story you always think of, like I'm going to like quit and throw my computer and like all that. They could have, right? But instead they're like, no, thank you. We're not going to do that thing, sir, your majesty. They're polite. And obviously, if you look at this, man, they were just cool, calm, and collected. This is a different response to life just smacking you upside the head here. And if you could summarize their response with one word, it's the word faith. This is such a faith-filled response, but not like that shallow, like platitude, like that Facebook post your sappy Christian friend makes, you know, like not that kind of faith. This is a different kind of a faith. This is layered, this is nuanced, this is sophisticated, this is really deep. And if you notice, there's 3 levels to their response here. There's 3 levels of faith. And if you're gonna be different when life punches you in the mouth, you're gonna need all 3 of these. So the first layer of faith that they have in this response is they believe that God can save them. So they believe God can. They believe God can. That's the first layer of faith they have here. And that's like, we believe God can do anything, right? There's nothing impossible for God. And that was their official stance. Now for us, if you're a Christian, I feel like if I gave you a test and said, hey, can God do anything? You'd mark yes, right? Like this is a pretty easy answer intellectually for us. And I think if you had to like somebody asked you about your God, one of the ways you would describe him is that he's able to do anything, right? Like at a purely intellectual, like high level, you would say this about God. But what happens is when we get down into the trenches of life, down into the mud of life, and you have different situations you're in, it's harder to hold on to that when you look at something specific. Because again, for these boys, you got to say, hey, hold up a minute. Like, look around, guys. Like, you're in the middle of hostile territory. Your army that you had, Babylon destroyed already. This dude, he conquered. You already lost that fight. Now you're standing in enemy territory surrounded by people who all did bow down, by the way. An army, a city, a king. You're up against everything. So for them to say, we believe God can save us, that's a huge statement for them to make. But I gotta say, if I were in that situation, I'd be looking around like, well, I mean, theologically, technically, but I don't know. And maybe is that what happens sometimes to us? Where again, you hold a belief up here, but when you get down into life, it's harder to hold on to it. And maybe you almost have like a cognitive dissonance happen where you believe 2 things at once. Yes, I believe God can do anything, but I don't think he can do anything here. You ever been there? Like you get into a personally impossible situation where you almost believe 2 opposing things at once. You're in an impossible marriage or an impossible relationship. I believe God can do anything, but I don't know about that. Maybe you're in an impossible job. Like, my boss, oh my gosh. Maybe you're in an impossible financial situation. Maybe you have impossible kids, right? Maybe there's something going on inside of you that at this point in your life, you're like, you know what? This feels impossible. This addiction, this anger, this lust, this thing, it's just got a hold of me, and this seems impossible. I believe God can do anything, but man, like down in the trenches of life, it's like your perspective shifts and what you believed up here, maybe you don't feel like is true down here. And I get it. It's weird. This is part of why, in case you're wondering, like Christians get accused of being hypocrites, because sometimes we do this stuff. That's a normal human thing to do. To say, hey, I believe this, but in this situation. But I think some of this has to do with, you ever notice how when something's closer to you, it feels bigger than something further away? It's not real, but it's perspective-wise. Like that thing that's far away feels smaller than the thing that's close to me. And that can happen. It's a stupid thing, but I know you don't do this, but if you're home with your family and all those people that God gave you in your life, and instead of spending time with them, you did something like this. I know you don't do it, but other people do. And I never, ever do this. But in this situation, the phone feels bigger than you, right? I can block a whole section of you out with my phone. My phone, this is a little tiny thing. But because it's close to my face and because I'm focusing on it, I can barely see you if at all. But it's all about perspective, and it's about literally texting me as I'm nice. It's all about perspective. It's about proximity and perspective, right? So one, the phone's closer and you're further away. Two, I'm focused on it and not you. And I want to say, hey, in those situations that feel impossible, is it possible that maybe the reason it feels impossible is because you're so zoomed in on that and you're so close up to that and you've let God kind of drift a little further away. So God feels small and the situation feels big. And yeah, you'd get the theological question right, but in this situation, the thing that's close to you feels bigger. And I guess what I want to suggest is that instead of trying to intellectually fix this, maybe what you need to do is get a little closer to Jesus in your life. Maybe if you had some proximity to the God of the universe, all of a sudden he'd get real big, and maybe the situation would shrink in comparison. So if you're feeling that feeling of, yes, I believe God can, but I don't know about this, then work on your proximity to Jesus. So that's the first layer of faith, and you need this. When life punches in your mouth, you need to believe God can save here. God can do this. Now, the second layer, I don't know if you noticed it in their response, is they expected that God will. They expect that God will. He said, hey, our God is able and he will save us. Now, that's different, right? It's one thing to believe, again, that God can do something. It's a whole nother thing to expect that he will. And I think this is one of the things that trips a lot of us up. Because if you get a gold star for believing that God can do anything, good job. You got it. But then, do you think he will? Do you think he'll move in your life? I don't know. And we kind of stop at that first layer and we hesitate here of having the expectation that God actually can move in our life in miraculous ways, that God could do something today, right now, this week, this month, this year, spectacular in your life, that you're holding back. You could, but you're holding back I don't know if he will though. I don't know if I have a sense of I hope he will, but I don't know if I would call it an expectation. And you're stuck here. And I think this is a big tripping point. So I think there's plenty of reasons why you might feel this way. I think I'm gonna focus on two big ones. The first reason you might struggle with an expectation that God's gonna move in your life is because you've done that before. You've had an expectation that God move and he didn't, and it hurt. And then you had an expectation that God would move and he didn't, and it hurt. And then you had an expectation that God would move and he didn't, and it hurt. And now you're sitting here going, come on now. I'm going to learn from experience. All those expectations, that actually caused a lot of pain in my life. So I'm gonna pull back from that. And I don't want to expect anymore because it hurt too much. And what you're doing is you're reducing your expectation on God to protect yourself. You'd rather not have a knife stuck in the same spot again. And I get it. I find myself being tempted towards cynical, being tempted towards being jaded a lot. And sometimes I wander into that. But I feel like God's been nudging me, especially just these past couple of weeks since really the year began, that faith requires vulnerability. That to really have a God-pleasing faith, it requires a level of vulnerability. That you can't have a God-honoring faith and remain completely safe in your little cocoon where I'm good because I didn't have any expectations. That's not gonna be a God-honoring faith, it's not. That it's gonna require you to put yourself out there a little bit. It's gonna require you to get your hopes up and maybe dashed, but those hopes are actually honoring to God in some way. They're honoring to God in some way. So I want to nudge you, especially if you're in that camp where you're like, yeah, I'm a little jaded, or yeah, I'm a little cynical. You don't call it that. You call it experienced, and I get it. But I want to press on you to say, hey, if you eliminate expectation, you might be eliminating more than just the pain. What if when you eliminate expectation on God, you eliminate more than that? Like, what? Do you think that if our Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had been standing there and they had been like, well, King, your majesty, theologically speaking, our God can technically save us. We don't think he will, but like, can you imagine if that was the speech? You know what I'm saying? Do you think the story would have went the same way? I know God's gonna do what God's gonna do, but I actually think their expectation had an impact on the outcome, that their expectation moved in the spiritual in some way, that expectation was pleasing to God, that they believed that he would move in a miraculous way. And that I believe that's true in your life too, that your expectation actually matters. That if you have a really safe, conservative, I'm gonna hold this back because I don't wanna get hurt kind of a faith, you're gonna get exactly what you expect. You're gonna get exactly what you expect. The book of James even talks about this. It talks about being double-minded in all your ways. That man should expect nothing from God. Like that you should not hold back that. So I want to encourage you, if you're jaded, if you're a little cynical and you've been holding back on God and you're like, hey, the distance between my expectation of how things are going to go and how God actually made them go, that's where my pain lives. I get it. But what if believing God and living a life of faith and seeing God move throughout your life requires you to put yourself out there a little bit? And that means that, yeah, it's gonna hurt sometimes. It is. It just is. I had a whole staff meeting on this in the beginning there. Like, hey, we're gonna lean into expecting God to do big things and he might not do what we thought, but we're signing up for it. It's okay because we're gonna get hurt and we're gonna keep moving if that's the case. But we think, in general, that big prayers honor God and God honors big prayers. So we're not gonna back down from that. We're not gonna be like overly polite with God. Be like, hey, I know you're busy. Could you just maybe do this little thing? I know other people ask for big things. They're rude and a little, they lack self-awareness. I have lots, so I'm not gonna ask you for big things. We're not gonna do that because it's the God of the universe. He is infinite. It is insulting for him to not say, I believe he can save me from a fiery furnace, and I actually expect that he will. Like that honors God. God's up in him and going, yep. And I think there was something to that. So don't get stuck in cynical. Don't get stuck in safe faith. So I think that's the first reason why you might not have an expectation. Now there's a second reason, but it actually probably is the number one reason. Another really big reason why you might not have an expectant faith is very simply, it's one word. It's the word guilt. It's guilt. You don't expect God to move in your life because you feel guilty. You're like, hey, I didn't do what God wanted me to do. I'm not living the way God wants me to live, so I shouldn't expect God to move in my life. And you maybe it's not like fully conscious. It might be kind of a subconscious thing that you do, that you kind of feel like, hey, I need to get my life together a little bit. I need to get a little distance between me and that mistake that I made, and then I'll have some expectations on God. Or maybe it's like, hey, I just need to, string together a couple of days of reading my Bible in a row, and praying a little bit and not cussing at my kids, stuff like that. No, I know you don't do that. Other people do. But you just want a little distance, a little bit of a track record to be able to go to God with some expectations. And I want you to know, oh my gosh, that's like not what we believe as Christians. Do you realize that? Like as Christians, we believe that we interact with God not based off what we do, but based off what Jesus did. Like that's our standing before God is what Jesus did, not what we do. It's Jesus' resume, not your resume. The reason you're able to enter the presence of God at all has nothing to do with you. It's Jesus. It's what he did. So for you to walk into his presence, which you shouldn't be allowed to do anyways, you're only doing that because Jesus died for you. And then for when you to get there, be like, all right, God, I'm gonna work really hard. Can I earn some things here? And for God to be like, dude, I gave you everything. God probably calls you dude. I gave you everything. The definition of grace is that it is given, it is merit that you did not deserve. You are given something. So for you to pray and have this weird thought in your head that God's up in heaven, like looking down on something that happened this week, and God's like, you know, if you had just been reading your Bible, I might have helped you there. Like, that is crazy. That's not Christianity. That's some kind of works-based, I really hope God, like, I can earn some things for you. Like, that's not what we believe at all, at all. Your standing before God is because of what Jesus did on the cross for you. That is a miracle. It is not a, that's what happened when I got saved, now I got to work for it thing. That's not the way this works. You need God's grace every day of your life. And any good thing is a gift from him. So he already gave you the biggest one ever. Ask for more. Be bold. I'm going to have an expectation. Hey, God, you already gave me all this. And I know you're infinite, and I know I trust you, so I'm going to ask for this. And I'm going to actually expect you to move, not because I'm good, but because Jesus is good, because you're good. And I think that honors him. I think that honors him. So if you're sitting here, I don't have expectation because I feel guilty. Okay, I get it. But God's already not interacting with you based off your resume. So lean into grace. Lean into the fact that Jesus died for you, and that forgiveness is your sins, past, present, and future. All of them. He forgave all of your sins. Do you realize when Jesus died on the cross 2,000 years ago, all of your sins were future sins at that time? Do you know that? Like he wasn't like, he didn't get to this Friday and be like, I didn't know they were going to do that. Like, that's, never mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Like, they were all future sins. He's covered it. You're clean. You're free. Stop acting like you're not. When you walk into the presence of God, you can walk in with that confidence. It's not yours. It's Jesus' confidence. It's, I am an heir now. Because Jesus died for me, I'm adopted by the God of the universe. I am a son or a daughter of God. I do not have to walk in here with some like, well, you know, I'm working on this, God. Like, no. Don't let guilt, don't let condemnation stop you from living a life of expectation. It's imperative. It's living like a slave when you're a son. All right, I could shut up, Adam. I gotta move on. Why did you go over first service? That was the part. That's why I went over. Did it again, by the way. Believe that God can. That's layer one. Expect that he will. That's layer two. And you can see, like, hey, this gets a little harder as you go, right? Believing that God can. No offense. My 5-year-old's got that one down, just so you know. She believes God can do anything. She thinks that every day is going to be a miracle day, and somehow God's going to use me to fulfill all of those things. 100%. She loves it. But then you get into the expectation, and that's a little bit harder. That's a little bit more advanced. You got to navigate. Hey, Christian, are you jaded now, or are you feeling guilty now? Now you got to find another level of expectation. And the third level is harder still. And did you notice how they ended their little speech? We want you to know, Your Majesty. We want you to know, O King, even if he doesn't save us, still not bowing down. This isn't outcome dependent for us. We're not only going to serve God if he does what we want him to do. We're going to serve God even if he doesn't do what he wants us to do. So this is the layer that we trust him even if he doesn't. We trust him even if he doesn't. And this is the deepest level of faith. Because sometimes you're going to be in a difficult situation. You're going to believe that God can save you. You're going to expect that God can save you. And he's not. He's not. And I want to say it's easier. It's easy to believe God when he's doing everything you think he should be doing, right? It's even easier to lean into expectation when you're on a roll. Like, hey, God's moving. All right, let's go. Expectation. But where your faith really gets tested is when he doesn't do what you wanted him to do. Especially if it's something that you're like, that makes no sense. This was a slam dunk. God, what are you doing? This is obvious what you should do, and he doesn't. When you believed and expected that God would rend the heavens and come down, and you look up and all you see is cloud cover. That's a different kind of faith. So I was preparing this week, and I just read and listen and watch, and I do all this stuff, and I like to listen to sermons while I'm working out and stuff. So it's not forefront, it's more background, but I'm always listening to something. And this name kept coming up all throughout the week. And I'm like, I was trying to ignore it because I didn't want to talk about it. I was like, nah. But it kept coming up, and I'm like, all right, since I'm slow, God, obviously you're trying to get my attention. It was God, hey, pay attention. So I'm going to tell you this. I feel like this is something God wants you to hear about. It's a guy named Viktor Frankl. He was a Jewish psychiatrist who lived through the Holocaust, which is a rare thing to say, right? He was actually put in one of the most infamous Nazi concentration camps, Auschwitz, which is even rarer to say that somebody survived that. And while he was there, he lost everybody. His parents, his brother, his pregnant wife. He lost everybody. And it was obviously, this is as bad as it gets. This is life more than punching you in the mouth. This is the lowest of low. And while he was there, he couldn't like turn the psychiatrist off. So he's in the worst possible situation in life, but he's also observing people. And on the other side of it, he gets out and he actually writes a book about his experience. And he looks back and he says, hey, there's kind of two types of people when it comes to like the worst kind of suffering in the world. You know, the people who like persevere and make it through, and the people who give up and crumble. And he noticed the difference. Now, obviously in Auschwitz, some don't have a choice whether you survive or not, but he was talking about, hey, the difference between people who would persevere and the people who would give up. The people who were like, yes, we're going to make it through even if they didn't make it through, and the people who gave in to despair. He said there's a noticeable, tangible difference between the two. And what he observed is the difference between those who survived and didn't was those who survived and persevered found meaning in the suffering. They were able to find some kind of meaning in that. And the ones who gave up, gave into apathy, gave into there's nothing to this. This is just the worst thing to happen and there's nothing to it. So that was the difference. It was meaning. Now this is really important. Those who lost meaning were more likely to collapse inwardly, become apathetic, hopeless, eventually unable to go on. But Frankl concluded that suffering itself did not break people. Rather, it was the loss of meaning in suffering that proved fatal. That is huge for you to know. Again, that means that it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. It's actually going to dictate your path, because he's saying, hey, same thing happened to all of us, but there were two paths forward. There was that space between what happened to them and how they were going to respond, and something happened in that space. They found some kind of meaning in it, something deeper. Now, as a Christian, if you're a Christian, you believe that even the worst things that could happen to you, God can use them to do something. You believe that. And again, maybe that's a really high theological belief. You know, there's a verse in the Bible that says God works all things out together for good of those who love according to his purpose, all that stuff. You might quote that, and that's a really cool thing to know in Bible study. But when you're in the bad thing, it's harder. But one of the things we can hold on to, and one of the things that will make a difference in your life, is to say that even when the bad thing happens, even when God does not do what I want him to do, I believe that he must be up to something that I don't see. He must be doing something that's so big that I only have a sliver of it. Or maybe he's gonna use this bad thing to do something in my soul that he wouldn't have been able to do any other way. That he's gonna shape me and mold me more into the person he created me to be through this difficult situation. And you hold on to a belief that even though I believed you could do it, even when I expected you to do it and you didn't, I trust that you've got a plan. And I think that's kind of where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego landed. But like, hey, believe that God can. This is a slam dunk. He can save us from you, ego, maniac. Oh, and we expect him to. We expect him to. But even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow down, because they believed that their death would do something. They believed that it was going to matter, that God was going to take that doing the right thing was actually going to be worth more. God was going to do something with the world, and it was going to be worth more to the soul than to give in and do what would have been easy. And, well, listen, let's be real here. You're not facing a fiery furnace. You're not in Auschwitz. We're in America in 2026 here. You're probably not facing anything of this level. So the stuff you're facing, the fight of the Christian life is to believe that even when the bad thing happens, God's up to something. That I trust that he's gonna do something with this. And that meaning will magnify a path that is better in your life, that you will lean into something, and I believe God will move through that. And that is the deepest level of trust. That is the deepest level of trust. So listen, for you completionists, I'm like, this is a Sunday school story, so I'm like, you probably know how this ends if you grew up in church at all, but if you don't, I need to share the end of it real quick. They do get thrown into the furnace. They do. The worst thing happens. The thing that you would have never woke up that morning hoping, I get burned alive today, it happened. They got thrown into the furnace. Nebuchadnezzar went ballistic, heated the thing up 7 times hotter, and threw him in. But when he looked down in, expecting to see 3 people burning, which is horrible that he's like looking for it, he, instead of seeing 3 people burning, he sees 4 people walking around. And that 4th person is the presence of God in this thing. So here's what I want you to see. God didn't save them from the fire. He saved them through it. And listen, if God ever would ask me, would you rather me save you from a fire or through the fire? 100% of the time I'm like, from, please. Always. It's going to be my natural answer. And maybe that's where you're at too. Like, God, I want you to save me from the fire. I don't want to go through it. But I want you to know sometimes going through the fire, what he's going to do going through the fire is actually bigger than what he would have done if he saved you from it. Because what happens is King Nebuchadnezzar, who's a complete egomaniac, like if you would have said, can this guy possibly see truth? Like, no way, that's impossible. Yeah, I believe God can do anything, but there's no way he's going to move in that guy's heart. He looks down and sees 4 people and he's like, oh, remember when I said no, God could save them? How about that? There is one. And something happens. His eyes get open, his heart gets softened a little bit. And there's movement in this kingdom. And God's name is magnified through this horrible thing that happened in their life that wouldn't have happened if God had saved them from the fire. And that's what I want you to know. If you're a Christian, this is why it's so important that you're different in the dark times. Because I think the people that know you, when they look at your faith, when things are going well, they're gonna be like, that's cool, nice. You're happy when things are going well. Your life is good when your life is good. But if you have a faith, even in the dark times, even down in the pit, even through the fire, if you have a faith down here, the people in your life are gonna look at you and be like, hold up a minute. How are you doing that? Where's that strength coming from? Where's that passion from? How are you still going? They're gonna be drawn to that. And God will do something more with that. It's more important that you're different in the dark than it is to be different in the light. It is. It's your opportunity. And I know, again, you'd never choose it, neither would I. I would never choose, like, God, take me through the fire today, please. No, I don't want that. But you better know when you're in it that this is your opportunity to shine. This is your opportunity to show the world that your God is your God and your faith is real. And I want a faith like that. So believe that he can, always. Expect that he will. Lean into that. And then trust him if he doesn't. Would you stand with me? Let's pray. Lord, I love this story. My favorite part's when you save them. And I want to believe, Lord, that I would make the same decisions as them and have the same faith and passion that they had, but I know myself a little bit too much to believe that I could nail that one. But I want it. And Lord, I pray for every person standing here right now, Lord, that whatever they're facing in their life, they would believe that you can move in it. Whatever impossible situation they're looking at right now, that they would, in their heart, believe, my God can do this. And that even more than that, Lord, that they would expect it. They would have a God-honoring expectation that you will move in their life. And that you would be pleased with the expectation, and they would feel your pleasure at that. Even if they feel jaded, even if they feel guilty, that they would lean into expectation right now, Lord. That they would know that they're forgiven, and that is their stance before you. And Lord, I pray for the person who's going through it right now, that you didn't say yes when they asked, that you would be with them in it. They'd feel your presence in it. And that they would fight to believe that you can do something even in the dark. That we would have a depth of faith here that would show you off to the world. In Jesus' name I pray.